The United Nations COP28 climate conference has opened in Dubai. Governments are preparing for 2 weeks of talks in hopes of an agreement on phasing out fossil fuels. A record 70,000 participants are expected to attend over the coming days. But there's been criticism of the host country's choice of the man chairing the talks.
As they head to the summit's venue, the controversy over the choice of the host is not lost on some of the participants. The United Arab Emirates is one of the world's top oil-producing countries, and it picked up an oil executive to preside over the talks.
We are here in Dubai in one of the largest exporters of fossil fuels in a country that's really reliant on fossil fuels. And we don't want to shy away from that truth and that reality. We think that this is the right COP and the COP to be calling for a phase out of fossil fuels and centering a conversation on what a just transition away from fossil fuels look like.
The COP28 president brushed off criticism, saying climate action would be impossible without oil companies taking part. Speaking at the summit's opening, Sultan Al Jaber said the world has reached a dangerous crossroads.
The UAE is deeply proud and humbled to be hosting COP28 at a pivotal time in this critical decade for climate action. We know, as you know, the gravity of this moment. We feel, as you feel, the urgency of this work.
Yet the lacking sense of urgency is exactly what politicians around the world have been criticized for. It's a sentiment shared by many activists attending the talks in the UAE.
I hope in this climate change meeting, we talk less, we practice more. Action at first. Very important. Climate change is the war. It's the war. We have refugees, climate refugees.
The hosts called the 2-week summit the largest ever climate gathering, while the UN says it could be the most important global meeting since Paris 2015. Back then, nations agreed to limit global warming to well below 2 degrees Celsius. But scientists warn that the planet is running out of time to achieve this goal, with this year being the hottest on record.
To dig even deeper into the subject, I'm now joined in the studio by DW's environment reporter, Beatrice Christofaro. Beatrice, the conference was kicked off by agreeing this loss and damage fund that Blaise also just mentioned. What is this fund and why is it so important?
The Loss and Damage Fund essentially works like an insurance scheme for low-income countries who are hit by extreme weather. And who's paying into this fund? It's the richer nations, the wealthy nations, who are also, coincidentally, the ones that are polluting the most, who are kind of driving the problem here. And so this was something that was agreed upon last year. But then, of course, they still had to decide how exactly are we going to play this out. And the fact that after so much back and forth, it is now we're starting the conference by kicking it off, by saying, OK, it's going to go into motion. This is historic. Because just a few years ago, it was unthinkable to even think that richer nations would even agree to pay into a fund like this. But there's still a sticking point, and that is that what the negotiators kind of agreed to now, it doesn't make it legally binding for these countries to pay into it. It only urges developed nations to pay into the fund. So there's still
Would that be enough to just urge them?
Well, that's what activists are saying, is that no, it's not enough. Lots of people can kind of back out there. But that's all we have for the moment. And also, this is something that has been discussed for months, and 5 negotiations around this kind of went bust. And so the fact that this was finally agreed upon is already a huge step.
Now, the World Meteorological Organization issued a report today that this year, 2023, is said to be the warmest year ever. What more can you tell us about this report?
The report confirms a lot of things we already know, but that doesn't mean that these statistics are not shocking. We are seeing the hottest year on record, a record level of sea level rises, record lows with Antarctic ice, record concentration of greenhouse gases in the atmosphere. And we're seeing the consequences of this all over the world. The report is saying that we're seeing this in every single continent. We're seeing extreme weather in every single continent. So the fact that the report is coming out now should really serve as a call to action to all the world leaders or all the...
no accident that it's coming out now.
Exactly. Like, it was obviously thought through when these world leaders are all together pledging that they're going to change the world and they're going to do better. Why not tackle fossil fuels? Why not, what activists are really calling for is a full phase out of fossil fuels, because we've known for a long time that this is what's driving the problem. And activists are also saying, if we don't tackle this anytime soon in any of these conferences, COP is going to become a laughingstock because it knows what the problem is, but it's not really addressing it.
Very briefly, countries are still investing in fossil fuels. How likely are the biggest contributors there to phase them out?
It's unlikely that a full phase-out is going to happen, and that's because this conference needs everyone to agree, and we have big countries like US, China, India, even the host, the United Arab Emirates. They're all against a full phase-out because they say their household energy and their economies are too dependent on it. And then even the EU, which is for a full phase-out, is only talking about technology, about unabated emissions. So that means that you could still use technologies like carbon capture, which has been proven doesn't work on a big scale. What we can hope for is a possible phase down of fossil fuels.
That would be a good first step.
It would be a first step, yeah.
Indeed. Thank you very much, DW's Beatrice Christofaro there.
COP28 UN Climate Summit is underway in Dubai, and it has started with controversial words from the event's host. In his opening remarks, Sultan Ahmed Al Jaber said that fossil fuels must be part of any deal at the crucial negotiations on global warming. The 2-week-long talks come at a pivotal moment, with emissions still rising. World leaders have been urged to move quicker to a clean energy future, with the world off track to keeping global temperatures rises below agreed levels. But this year's COP president chose a different tone to kick off the event. Take a listen.
I know there are strong views about the idea of including language on fossil fuels and renewables in the negotiated text. We collectively have the power to do something unprecedented. In fact, we have no choice but to go the very unconventional way. I ask you all to work together.
For more, let's bring in Claudia Kempfert. She's an energy expert at the German Institute for Economic Research. Welcome back to the program, Claudia. The head of the COP meeting says that the role of fossil fuels must be included in a deal at these UN climate talks. What do you make of that?
Well, this goes in the completely opposite direction that we should have. I mean, what we need is a fossil fuel phase out as soon as possible in order to reach a 1.5 Celsius global warming target, which we aim at. And this is not happening with this kind of statements. Obviously, there are interest conflicts with the COP president and the fossil fuel industry, and that's should not happening at the climate conference. I hope that the countries will agree on an increase of renewable energy, but fossil fuel phase out would be the right direction.
Experts are saying this climate summit needs to set up specific guidelines as to the direction global climate protection needs to be going in the coming decade. What specifically are these guidelines?
Yeah, what we really need now is guidelines that we, on the one hand, increase, for example, the share of renewable energy, do more for energy saving, and also step-by-step phase out fossil fuels. And these kind of guidelines are needed. I mean, we need the national commitments in order to phase out fossil fuel subsidies, for example, go the way towards more renewables and provide the right policy measures for this. And all this needs to happen. And on the other hand, we see on a global scale that a lot of countries are suffering from climate change. They need financial aid, and this will be discussed at the conference as well.
Now, the UK government recently allowed for the first coal mine in the country to be opened up in the last 30 years. We see Germany moving away from Russian natural gas to liquefied natural gas from different suppliers. What do you make of the argument that some governments are more invested in fossil fuels that they should be in order to keep costs low and to be able to power the transition to an affordable, greener economy?
Yeah, that's really a pity. I mean, those step backs are really problematic because we are right now in the year 2023, and we should do everything we can do not to invest into fossil energy anymore, not in coal mines, not in liquefied natural gas, instead in renewable energy and energy efficiency. Otherwise, we will never reach the climate goal that we initiated and the Paris Agreement we all committed to. And this is the completely wrong way, either in Germany, also UK, but in many other countries in the world. We have other options on the table which are cheaper. And these are the renewable energy. If we would invest into it, the whole cost system would decline, and we would have a lot of economic benefit out of it. And this is completely not understandable why those countries are deciding on it.
There are trends emerging, however, outside of China. Less than 2 gigawatts of new coal power capacity went into construction in the first 3 quarters of this year, which is well below a 2015 to 2022 annual average of 16 gigawatts. So how optimistic are we to be about that?
We can be a little bit optimistic about that because we might see a little bit, or we might see a peak coal in 2025, not only in China, but also in other countries as well, because indeed there are less investments or additional investments into coal than initially expected. That's a good thing. And on the other hand, renewable energy becomes more and more cheaper, energy savings as well. And especially in China, they invest a lot into renewables, but also into electric mobility, for example. The US has a huge program to invest into clean technology. So we see a lot happening, and that is an optimistic view. And there are studies in showing that there might be a peak coal, might be also peak gas in the next years. However, we see also tendencies that do the opposite.
Speaking about peak coal, things look quite differently in China. The country is building 2/3 of the coal-fired electricity generation capacity currently under construction globally. What role can China play in trying to limit global warming at these UN talks underway in Dubai?
Well, yeah, China has always been in the last years a very important role in this kind of conference, and now also in Dubai, because they have it in their hands not to increase or let the emissions increase as steep as it has been expected before. China is investing into everything at the moment, nuclear, coal, but not coal to that large extent, which initially was expected, but also into renewables and also into electric mobility and everything. But this brings also the markets to an interesting perspective, especially the market for solar, the market for electric mobility, and the costs are going down. And this is really important also for the global scale, for those countries like now also in Dubai, who have not the huge economic ability to reach those goals. But China here has a key role.
And China is investing heavily in renewable energy, as you mentioned that, but at the same time, trying to get the communist leadership of China, get them off the track of relying heavily on coal, hasn't worked in the past. Will it work now?
Well, it might work in a sense because China is not investing to that large extent into coal anymore as it has been in the past. Also because of environmental reasons, because of also emissions in that country as well, and particular emissions, so on, that also dirt the cities in China. That is one thing, and but the other one, which is really important, is that China is investing into that large extent into emission-free technologies, and this helps on a global scale a lot. Together with the US, we might see here a little bit of a change, market-driven, not so much. I mean, a little bit also political-driven, but basically also market-driven, driving because the costs are going down. So to that large extent down.
Let's take another look at this summit, which is going on in Dubai. The COP28 president is Ahmed Al-Jaber. He's also the chairman of the Abu Dhabi National Oil Company, which is the world's 12th biggest oil company. Now, there have been accusations that he'll use the climate summit to forge new alliances, even sign fresh deals. Let's listen to what Ahmed Al-Jaber said about this.
These allegations are false, not true, incorrect, and not accurate. And it's an attempt to undermine the work of the COP28 presidency. I promise you, never ever did I see these talking points that they refer to, or that I ever even used such talking points in my discussions.
Claudia, are you concerned that this meeting could be the place to strike new fossil fuel deals?
Yeah, I'm completely concerned because I'm not convinced that the COP president is really telling us the truth. He has obviously an interest conflict, and this is now showing. And all the documents which are now out and showing that he has obviously interest in taking new fossil fuel deals makes it even worse. Even, of course, he says he will not do it. He has not to do it, because otherwise he would not be a COP president. But on the other hand, he has a conflict of interest. It would have never been allowed that he is a COP president. That was a mistake from the very beginning. We should find other places where the next conferences will take place, not in fossil fuel countries and not with presidents who has conflicts of interest with the fossil fuel industry. And this should have been avoided, and we should avoid it for the future COPs.
And if we take another look at clashing interests here, oil-rich countries have formed a group of the so-called like-minded. Bolivia is heading this group, which includes countries like Mali and Cuba. How concerned are you that rich countries are hiding their agendas behind the needs of the poorest?
Yeah, I'm really concerned. And this is the conflict which we saw always at each conference, the climate conference also in the past, that those countries who have a lot or a large share of fossil industry or fossil energy always have a different aim than those countries who don't have it and which are suffering more. And also the poor, some of them have fossil fuels or some resources, others not. Others are suffering more from climate change. So there are always these kind of conflicts at the conferences, and this is why it's so important to have a global view on it and discuss and negotiate that the emissions are going down, that fossil resources are not explored to that large extent that has been initiated or intended in the past, but also do more on climate protection in order to keep the fossil fuel in the ground and not burn it, and use more renewables here, and also help those countries who are not having a large amount of fossil in energy, and do some kind of energy alliances on renewable energy, which is really important.
Claudia Kempfert, energy expert at the German Institute for Economic Research. Thank you for your thoughts.
Thank you.